Poor little girl, she's been running in front of the car. Awful danger of getting run over, desperate for money. Look at her, she's climbing onto the car now. Terrifying.
Local charities estimate there are now 60,000 beggars on the streets, mostly women and children. The numbers have nearly doubled in 3 years.
What is life like for you in Kabul?
She was ashamed of having to beg.
She's now breaking down in tears. The economy is so bad, she says, that the only way she can feed her family is by going out and begging. And she earns, on an average day, a pathetic 100 afs. That's about $2.
I saw a young girl begging on her own.
How much money have you made?
She'd made about 7 pence.
And what are you going to do with that money?
She was going to give it to her mother.
I've just seen this young girl begging on the street. She tells me she's called Salama and that she's 7 years old, that she's got 9 brothers and sisters, and they all beg too, and they have to beg because their parents haven't got any money.
Salama agreed to take me to her home.
We finally reached Salama's house, and it has to be said this is a very, very poor area of Kabul.
Salama's parents and their 10 children live in one room.
Very kind of you to see us.
Her father was out collecting rubbish to use as fuel. Begging was the only way they could survive.
Salama's mother says that things are desperate. She's had nothing to eat today at all, apart from a cup of tea, and the same true of the other children. Do you feel guilty about sending them out to beg?
She said she felt very guilty.
Salama's mother said of course she doesn't want to send them out to beg, but she has no choice. There's no other way of making ends meet. And between them all, they make no more than 60 afs. That's barely $1.
She said that life was much better under the Taliban. Her husband had a job then.
This very sad story tells us what a desperate state the economy is in Kabul. All the children sent out to beg, no money to send them to school or buy them food.
While some wait for the Taliban with hope, there are others who feel nothing but fear. This is an institution the Taliban have vowed to destroy. It's a girls' school. Sadia said the security situation was getting worse by the day.
She cites the kidnappings, which are getting worse, and she says that girls are now getting raped from the age of 12. So you have fear for women's rights here in Kabul?
She felt that in a city waiting for the Taliban, women already had very few defenders.
Sadia says there's no one to protect women in Kabul. If a woman gets attacked, there's no one to stand up for her rights.
Rihanna is saying that the great threat to her future is the Taliban. In southern Afghanistan, they throw acid in girls' faces just for going to school. She's afraid that they're gaining strength in Kabul too. All the girls felt threatened.
Farah has just said something really alarming. The security situation is so bad and the threat of suicide bombing so grave that many parents are reluctant to allow their daughters to go out of the house. That means they can't go to school, can't have careers. Do you sense that there is growing support for the Taliban here in Kabul?
Farah insisted support for the Taliban is getting stronger here in Kabul, certainly among ordinary people, but also among politicians.
And that means that women who took the burqa off back in 2001 when the Taliban was defeated are now beginning to put the burqa back on. Kabul may be under siege, but today the people of the city feel liberated. They've come out in their hundreds of thousands to celebrate the Afghan New Year.
On Sharinagh Hill, the Taliban used to throw prisoners to their deaths from diving boards. Today, the people of Kabul are just enjoying themselves. everyone was cheerful.
Mubarak. Mubarak. Harun is telling me that in the new year he's hoping for an end to the fighting, an end to the suicide bombing, an end to prices going up and peace for everybody. I was about to have my first contact with official Kabul, none other than the city police chief, General Abdul Rahman. I needed to ask him about the claims of police involvement in kidnapping and extortion. We have talked to several victims of kidnap, and some of them say that the police are implicated in the kidnap racket. Is that true?
Abdul Rahman had only been in the job a month. He explained why some people might have got the wrong impression.
The commander says that the police are not involved in the kidnap racket, but he does say that some of the kidnappers use police vehicles and police uniforms in order to kidnap their victims.
I put it to the commander that people in Kabul faced police corruption every day of their lives.
The commander accepts that there is some corruption in the police, but he says they're cracking down on it as much as possible, and he points out that corruption happens in other countries besides Afghanistan.
The commander was keen to add that they are fighting terrorism 24 hours a day, and he cited the arrest of 6 suspects from the suicide bomb that we visited on the Kandahar road. This is another familiar ritual for the people of Kabul.
We found out that one of the dead men from the suicide bombing on the Kandahar road, Mohammed Mustafa, is going to be buried today. And so we're following his family with the coffin in the back of the car back to his home for the funeral.
His family had to drive 5 miles out of Kabul for the burial, but their home village was in an area the Taliban didn't control. After travelling for an hour into the hills of southern Kabul, we finally arrive at the cemetery. I spoke with Mustafa's uncle.
Tell me about Mustafa.
He was grieving for his nephew, but his concerns were with the living.
Now that Mustafa is dead, there will be no one to look after his mother and his 4 sisters, to feed them, to clothe them, and to keep them in a house.
The mourners told me they were praying to God for a government that could provide them with better security. Otherwise, they could not survive.
Mohammed Sayed Mustafa wasn't a terrorist, he wasn't a policeman, he wasn't a soldier. He was just a car mechanic and the latest in a long list of innocent victims of the siege of Kabul.
It was the Taliban who murdered Mustafa, as they've killed countless others. But many people in Kabul are starting to believe that only the Taliban can offer security, and therefore a solution to Afghanistan's hideous cycle of violence.